Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be showcasing the Policy Manager application, how to set up rules and filters, and how this application works in conjunction with all the other applications in the NG Firewall solution. My name is Shannon Miles and I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I have with us John Coffin, our Director of QA, who will be going through this presentation and demonstrating all of the great benefits of the Policy Manager application. So next slide. Thank you. So just a few housekeeping rules before I pass it over to John. Please be sure you are selecting the correct audio preference on the right-hand side. If you do select to dial in using a phone, you will need to use the access code provided. And as always, we have a slew of people on to help answer questions. So please just submit any questions you have through the Q&A box on the right-hand side. We'll be happy to get to those. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to rewatch or share this recording with your colleagues at a later time. We send a follow-up link to this webinar 24 hours after the event has ended. So please be sure to keep an eye out for that. And as always, we're answering questions, but if we do not get to your question, or if you have a very specific question, you can always send us an email through sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. Now, before I move on, I want to reiterate that this is a very highly technical webinar. So if you're unfamiliar with Untangle or our solution or networking concepts, then this may not be the best webinar for you. We do have a more higher level webinar series called the Untangle 101s that may be of a better fit for you. And you can find all of our upcoming and past webinars on our website. And with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Shannon. So today we'll cover a lot of the aspects of Policy Manager and how it can better emphasize and enforce your particular policies that you have for internet use at either your company, your school, or even at home. So there's kind of different ways to filter rules out. Sometimes you want to filter users versus your incoming mail and web services sessions, or maybe you want to filter based on whether executives or the general working force or like parents and kids. Maybe you don't want your kids going to Facebook, but the parents can go to Facebook. So these are all ways that you can use Policy Manager to create different rules for different users, different devices. You also can do filtering by day of the week or time. So let's say on the weekend, kids can go to Facebook, or you can say after hours at a business, people are allowed to, roam different websites and so forth that they usually are not during business hours. So really the filtering is sets or racks, and those are the rules that you have. And one way you can think about it is almost like little virtual untangles that are all separate. So you have one box, but internally you can set up different paths for these sessions to make. And sessions, we mean people who, when you go to like CNN.com, that's a session. And that is a path that goes through a particular rack or policy in the Untangle, which has its own set of rules, and that can be different from each one. We have different ways of setting up the racks. There's a default rack that's just the base system as you install it. You can create a new rack, which is just another rack that you're going to install apps into separately. Or you can do what's called a child rack, which you can inherit everything from another rack, which means you're going to use the same apps, same set of rules, but then you can change some of the apps so they work differently. So that particular one, so changes on inherited items will automatically go to the child, but anything specific to that child won't be a rack. And we'll demonstrate it. It's kind of a hard concept to kind of grasp, but we'll go through that carefully. I'll just show you right here on Untangle. So if we go to our apps, you'll see we have the default policy, and this is how it comes right out of the rack when you install Untangle. I went ahead and installed the web filter and firewall on this default rack, and now I have my policy manager, and later on we'll show you how to manipulate the policies using either Active Directories or Radius server, or even the local user directory that's built into Untangle. So if we go, the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and make some rules here. So I'm going to say my default rack, I'm not going to allow people to go to CNN.com, for example. So I'll go ahead and make that rule. So I have a web filter now that blocks CNN.com. And if I use a device behind it, I'll go ahead and go to CNN.com. And you'll notice that I have a page is blocked. So let's see here. Sorry. So if I look at my reports and my blocked events, and let's just refresh that. Did I set that to flag? All right, so not sure why it's showing up reports, but it definitely shows it blocked over here in my pages, so I'll take a look at that in a bit. So that's for the default. Let's say I want to make a new rack for other people that I want to allow to go to CN.com. So I'll go ahead and go to my policy manager, and I'm going to say I'm going to make a new policy, which is racks. Policies and racks are the same thing. So I'll say a new rack, and I'll say this is my, just call it my second rack. And for right now, I'm not going to make any parent. It's not going to inherit from this other one. So I'm just going to go ahead and make, this is going to be a brand new rack. It's not going to inherit any rules. I will have to install the applications on that. So I'll go ahead and save that. So right now I have another rack, but I don't have any rules to send that traffic to there. So we'll go look at the second rack. And as you can see, the service apps are always in all the racks. They're identical on each one. But I don't have any applications that are filtering. So what I need to do is, because it's a new rack, so I need to install on there. So I'm going to install another copy of WebFilter. So again, since this is a new rack, it acts like a separate Untangle. The routing and so forth is separate, is the same, but the filtering will be different. And on this one, I'm not going to put CNN as blocked. So, but I have no way of directing traffic through this new rack that I created. So what I need to do is create a rule for that. So I'll go back to my policy manager, and we're going to create a rule. And there's different ways to create the rules. Probably the most simple is the IP-based. So I know my box behind it has this IP address. So I'll go ahead and say if the source address is this IP address, and we want to send it to this second rack. So we'll go ahead and done and apply. And so if we go to our second rack, as we can see from the stats here, we've had no traffic through there because we just created a rule, and now our traffic will go there. So I'll go ahead and go to cnn.com on my box behind there too. So as we can see, the pages scanned is going to be 2. So I have 2 scanned pages because there's advertisers and so forth that aren't coming directly. So, and that went through my second rack. So if we actually go in here, excuse me, and we'll go look at our web events. we can see that we went to CNN.com and it was not blocked at all. So that was a successful event. So as you can see, now I have two racks with different rules that I can send traffic through all through. So let's say I have complicated web filter rules, and really what I'm looking to do is just create a separate firewall rule. So I want to show you how to do inherit policies. So in this case, I'm going to make a new policy. So I'm just going to make it really obvious. I'm going to say child of default. And we'll just go ahead and copy that to the description. And then I'm going to make that a parent of the default policy. So if we go to this new child rack, you can see that the applications are grayed out. That grayed out means the applications do work on this particular policy, but they inherit the rules. You can't change the rules here. You have to go to the where it's inherited from to change the rules. And so, but if I want to make changes, like let's say I want to make the firewall rules slightly different on the child rack. So I'll go ahead and install my own version of the firewall on this rack. So now I inherit the web filter rules from the default rack, but I will have my own version of firewall on this particular rack, and I can make changes there. So I can just say here, I want to, for example, block port 80 traffic. Excuse me. So we'll say if the destination port is 80, we want to go ahead and block that. So as you can see, I currently don't have any traffic going to this child rack, so I can still go, for example, to CNN.com, and it's successful. But what I can do again is go into my policy rules, and for example, this one, I can just go ahead and change this to my child rack. And I'll go ahead and apply that change, and then I'll go ahead and try to go to CNN.com again. And as you can see, it stalls, which means it's being blocked without a block page because it's the firewall rules. So this is really kind of the basics of making multiple racks, making the support for different rules and so forth. So now I kind of want to focus on how to make rules and what are, how the rules can be different. So first of all, there's tons of ways to make rules. I can go ahead and say I want to assign a user to that particular, and then I can use the user rules. So for example, I can say when the, let's see here, where is user? Okay, if the host name, I don't remember the host name of this particular one, so I just need to go back here. So if we go to the host name, oh, the host name is just the IP address. Well, that's not very useful. So let's go ahead and assign a name to that box. And let's see here, device name. And I believe it's, I need the MAC address. So we're looking for this one, which is AD8. So go to hostname, AD, and what we'll do is go ahead and assign a username to it. So we've assigned a username to it. And now what I can do with my policy manager is base the rule on the hostname. So I can add a rule and just say client hostname, where is it? Username, sorry. And then I can go ahead and use a specific custom field, which is test box, because I have manually assigned a username to that box. And that works really well. So these are all pretty much, small networks, not many devices. So, what do you do when you have 500 devices on how to assign it to different racks and so forth? And that's when, excuse me, that's when you start in with some of the more directory connector. So let's say I want to use directory connector. What I'll do is go ahead and assign my directory connector to connect to my AD server. That will in turn pull the names out of my AD server, and I can assign rules based on the AD, the Active Directory rules. Another way I can do that is also with a radius server. I can have names assigned with a radius server using, for example, captive portal. So people will log in with their radius ID and then the radius password, and then that will enable us to identify that user no matter what machine they're on and assign rules based on that. So let me set one up really quick and show you how that looks. Let me just get my AD configuration. So I'll do AD testing. And we're not, it's not secured, so, and then we're going to go with a password. We'll put our domain in here. Let's go ahead and save that. Actually, I'm going to use the IP directly in this case. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's just make sure that works. Oh, that might be a secured one. Let's see here. It's not liking me today. It must be down for some reason. So anyways, you set it up in here. Then you go to your policy rules. And we'll go ahead and add a new rule. So this time we're going to add, and we're going to use the directory connector here. So directory connector, we can either do groups, so groups that you already have in your Active Directories, or we can actually use usernames. And usernames will be right here. And then what happen is you'll actually pull a list directly from your AD server. And same thing works with radius. You set up radius, use Captive Portal to identify that user with radius, and then that username label gets put on every session that they have. And that's a way to identify users by their names or groups, which is very useful in larger groups. One of the other methods that you can have for rules, for example, you allow certain kind of browsing after work hours or after, or on the weekend or so forth. So you can do things like, for example, you can say if the time, and you can mix these rules up too. It can be by username, so maybe a username after a certain amount of time or a certain part of the week. So you can say time of the day. So you can say any time between, let's say, and this works on a 24-hour clock, let's say between 5 o'clock in the evening to 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, I'm going to allow people to go to almost any rack. So I can say, I'm going to go send people to the second rack, which is going to allow all kinds of browsing and go through that. But you can also mix these up. So you can say maybe only a certain group of people after those hours can go anywhere they want. All kinds of ways of making these rules based on time. You can also do day of the week. And one thing to remember, the more rules you have, these conditions, these are all and conditions, which means they all must be met for this action to occur. So if I put, for example, day of the week, let's say I'm going to go do Sunday and Saturday. So in this case, only on Saturday and Sunday after 5 o'clock to 6 a.m. and will I send traffic to the second rack. So both conditions have to apply before the target policy is triggered. Very important to remember on those different rules. Some of the other ways that you can create rules which don't allow those, which is one of my favorites, is I actually base it on the type of browser that's being used. One of the things I do is, for example, is I identify mobile devices. It's not foolproof, but it's pretty consistently. So I'll do kind of an agent, and I'll say the agent will, for example, have phone in it, which will catch most iPhones, because most iPhones have the either iPhone or iOS in the registry, and this will catch a lot of the mobile devices for iPhones. And then what I'll do is create another rule that will actually have Android in the name, and that will catch quite a few. And that a lot of times what I'll do is send those off to a Captive Portal page, because I know it's bring your own device kind of situation, and I want them to understand that the network is monitored and so forth. Any kind of questions we're having on the forums?
Hey John, yeah, there was some questions about case sensitivity for either username or some of the other options.
So all usernames that are used in the rules are case insensitive. There was kind of a conflict. For example, radius does not have case sensitivity, but AD does. So we decided the best thing to do is just put case insensitivity. So you just want to put it in lowercase. I mean, it really doesn't matter, but we will match any capitals and so forth. Some people have run into conditions where they actually had two users with the same name, but the caps were different. It's just really hard to work with all that. So the best policy we found is just making things case insensitive. So you really want to just put lowercase those rules. But you do get a list from the AD server. The AD server will provide a list, so it's easy just to select the right user on those cases.
Great. Thanks. Just a few more questions that popped up. There was a little bit of confusion on the inherit racks and how far child racks can go and what we recommend. Could you go into that a little bit further?
Yeah, I think as far as I've tested 7 layers of depth in this. So for example, let's go over here to our policy manager. And but from what I understand, it's pretty much infinite, but it gets to the point where it's very confusing. So in this case, we have a depth of 2. So we have the parent rack and the child rack. We can in turn make another child rack of the child rack. So if we go, something like 3rd level, and we can actually inherit from a child. So if we go there, oh, forgot description. Let's take a look at that rack. Should we save it? So if we get to the 3rd level, so in this case, this web filter is actually inherited all the way to the parent rack. So this web filter is actually inherited because the child rack that it inherits from, it actually inherits that one further. But if we look at the 3rd rack, we can see here it's actually inheriting the firewall app from the child app. It inherits back to the first upper rack that has the app installed. I know that gets kind of confusing, and I really don't recommend more than 3 or 4 levels of depth because it gets to the point where it's really confusing and you don't know what's going on. One thing that actually comes up to one situation I want to definitely use the session manager, session viewer right here, because this will actually tell you what rack they're going through the policy. I don't have a traffic on here. Let me just generate a little bit of traffic. Let me just change a rule so I can get, I'm actually on a blocked. Let me disable these rules. Go back to my session manager. So we're looking at the policy column here. This will actually tell you what rack you're on. Unfortunately, I'm getting it too quickly. So in this case, I can see that this particular device behind my Untangle is going through the default policy. So that can help you when you're having multiple layers of inheritance to find out which rack they're going through. And like I said, it becomes quite confusing when you're getting a lot of levels of inheritance. It's very useful for like maintaining rules because, for example, if I want all my firewall rules for basic protection and my antivirus all to be the same settings, but the only thing I really want to change is the web surfing policies. What I'll do is go ahead and then just have one different web filter in each one of my racks. For example, here, I would have this web filter and that firewall. Well, on my child rack, I really want the same web filter. So also, if you remove an application inside a child rack that already inherits something else, once you remove that particular instance, it will automatically insert the inherited one, and that also populates down. Um, so in this case, the common case is you're going to want a different web filter for a particular rack. And then I'll go to my third level. And again, I'm still inheriting. So in this case, the third rack is identical to the child rack it inherits because I don't have anything different installed. But in this case, what I'll do is have yet a different web filter. So right now I have 3 racks. 2 of the racks inherit from each other, but they all have a different web filter, so I can assign different rules on that. And again, if you get confused about if your rules are working or not, definitely use the session viewer and then use the policy column to see where your traffic's going. And that kind of brings us over to a lot of the troubleshooting that we have. Again, child racks inherit from each other. You can have, children of children going down as many levels as you want. I don't recommend anything beyond 3 or 4 racks inheriting from each other because it gets to the point where it's really confusing where it's coming from. Session viewer will help a lot to go through those racks. Again, you can use the built-in user directories, for example. If I go to where is it? A local directory right here, I can create users that I'll set up for them. And then I can use Captive Portal to manage those devices. And then I can use the policy rules for those names and select them for a different rack. If you're going to use, if you're going to have, even when it gets past about 50 users, the local directory becomes kind of cumbersome to use. I really recommend using Directory Connector along with an Active Directory server or a Radius server. You can use the Google authentication in Captive Portal. It is experimental, so definitely give us feedback on how it works for you, but it allows people to log in either with their Facebook or Google identifications on Captive Portal, and then the name is associated with their Google or Facebook logins. And it's all about making those rules. And like I said, the rules do get complicated. If you do have problems on that, use the session viewer. And then on the forums, you can definitely get help on your rules. If you post the rules that you're using, can definitely help you figure out, we can help you on like, oh, this is why this rule is not triggering this particular response. So it's something to bring about. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it, John.
Okay, I think that'll be all of it. Again, please, we're more than glad to help you on the forums. Quite a few of our developers and staff are on the forums to help.
Thanks, John. So I'll just wrap this up really quickly if you could go to the next slide. All right, so hopefully that demonstration really showcased everything that Policy Manager can do along with all the other applications in our NG Firewall suite. However, if you are still confused or need help installing or configuring, if you're new to Untangle, you just got put in as the new IT manager or something, we do have professional services that can help you. We have, a team of great engineers on staff as well as our support people that can help figure out what's the best for you and your network environment. And just a reminder, we do have another Tech Talk in January for configuring Untangle. Please keep an eye out. We will have more webinars in 2017. We are currently working on those topics. If you do have recommendations of topics, please send them our way. We love to hear what you're struggling with or would like to get a little bit more in-depth demoing of, so please send that to us. We have multiple resources. John mentioned the wiki as well as the forums, and as always you can contact us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. And we thank everyone for joining us and providing feedback. Thanks John for the great demo, and we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you next time.